Okay, we are going to measure a new pallet today. Again, we're always going to start with the stringer first. That's always your first dimension. So we will measure this and say that it is a 48. Next thing is your deck board. And if you notice, these deck boards are different lengths. So we want to go with the longest of the two. So that would be 45. So we have a 48 by 45. 48 is your stringer, 45 is your deck board. Next thing is it's single face, double faced. Single faced means it doesn't have any bottom boards. Double faced means it does. So this is a double face. Is it two-way or four-way? Two-way means you can enter it from the front and the back only and not the sides. So if you notice, there's no notch on this stringer, so it becomes a two-way. So we are going to circle two-way. It's not a four-way, and it's not reversible. Okay, so we know it's 48 by 45. What do we do next? We're going to go to the stringers. How many are there? There are 1, 2, 3. So we're going to write down 3 stringers. Thickness. I'm going to start at the 1 because the tape measure pulls, and we're going to say that that is 1.5 inches. So we went from 1 to 2.5, so 2.5 minus 1 means 1.5 inches. So they are 1.5 inches, and we're going to measure the height by 3.5, which we all know is standard. We're going to confirm that by 48. So 1.5 inches is your thickness, your height is 3.5, and your length is 40. Moving on to the top deck. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to count how many we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and they're all the same width just by looking at them. So we're good at saying that we have 9 top deck. How thick are they? Starting at the 1 again, and I like the little cheat tape measures because you can really hone in when you have bad eyes. This is slightly under 1/2 inch, but it's not quite 3/8. So I'm going to call it 7/16. That's the number between 3/8 and 1/2 inch is 7/16. We know there's 9 of them. We've got the thickness. Now we need to just confirm that they're all 3.5, which when I eyeballed them, I could tell that they were. Just measure a couple of them just to make sure. So we're going to write in 3.5. And then the overall is 45, which should match your number up here. I gotta go back, I made a mistake. This should be 48. Going back up to the stringers, I just noticed I wrote 40. And a good way to double check yourself is this first number should always match the length of your stringers, and your deck board should always match the second number. So your first number is your stringer, your second number is the length of your deck board. So 48 and 45, we're doing good. Okay. Next, I'm going to measure the bottom deck. How many are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to write 5 bottom deck. And then I'm going to measure the thickness, again, starting at the 1. And we're at 7/16 again. This is, I mean, it really is close to 3/8, between 3/8 and 7/16. And it does look a tiny bit thinner to me, but we know if we have to put 2 different materials on a pallet, it's more labor, sometimes more costly, more sorting of the material. So we're just going to stick with the 7/16 on this one and say that it's 7/16. The width is 3.5. Double check. And the length should always be your second number again. But remember, this is a single wing, so this is going to be shorter than what we just measured. So it's 41.5. And that's where this wing comes in, because these two numbers are different. Now, we need to know what this wing is. So we can see that this is 1 3/8 on this side, and I'm gonna double check the other side just to make sure that it's even. I'm gonna drop it. Just to kind of make sure we know what they're going for. And I'm pushing down on the tape measure so that there's no extra give. Again, it's 1.5 inches. So when you write your single wing, you're either going to say it, add the 1.5 inches plus the 1.5 inches and say it's a 3-inch single wing, or you're going to say it's 1.5 inches each side. However you want to write that. Some people call it a 3-inch or 1.5 inches each side. Single wing. It's not flush. Is it nails? Yep, we got nails. Is there a 4-way? No, we took care of that earlier. No. Are the corners clipped? Nope. Are the chamfer lead edges of the pallet chamfered? That would be in between here. Nope. And that's usually with very thick bottom boards. Is there a stencil? Yes. What does that stencil say? Honda 4845 Max 1000 LBS. So we want to write that down. And I would write that right here. Stencil, yes. Honda 48 by 45 Max 1,000 pounds. That's exactly what the stencil says. Is there a color code, which is usually on your stringers? So I'm going to look at the side of my stringers. No, there's no color code. Is there a heat treat stamp? This one's been blacked out. So even though it looks like this is kiln dried pine with the heat treat already HT in here, there's no stamp. So I'm not going to mark stamp on this one, but I may make a note that it's heat treated pine, just so we know. And I'm gonna have to verify that with my buyer. You know, does he want only pine? Is it heat treated pine? It looks like this pallet may have been repaired. That's why the stamp was blocked out. But I'm just making a note of all this just so I know what questions to ask later. The heat treat stamp was blacked out. And I'm gonna ask my buyer about that. Okay, so we have the wing. Oh, one big factor, but going back to our little spec sketch, we need to make a note of where the boards are butted. You see they're not evenly spaced. The top boards are butted on both ends and the bottom boards are butted on both ends. So here is where I would either draw that or just write. There's several ways you can do this, but I would, on my top deck, I would say leads butted first two boards. Again, this is more for me when I'm writing it up or when we go to do a PDS or when we go to actually construct it. I have all my notes right here. Bottom, same thing. Lead boards butted. And then I would just say first two boards. And that is how you measure a single wing new, assuming it's new, pallet. All of this stuff is pretty much the same.